I'm joined here with Professor Keith Miller. He is endowed professor for lifelong learning in the sciences at the University of Missouri in the United States. Today he gave a keynote presentation on AI, aging, and ethics. It was very interesting, thank you very much, and very engaging. I think the audience really liked the questions and the back and forth. You talked about how AI is learning through probability and doesn't really develop a human intelligence. It's more logic and calculating and what is possible to happen. Then would you say that a lot of people are afraid of AI, that it's taking over, that it will start making decisions for us? But if it makes decisions based on calculations and probability, would you say that the danger is not AI, but actually humans?
I'll give a short answer, yes, and then I'll explain myself. Yes, the danger is humans, but I think the biggest danger is humans not using the machines intelligently or wisely. That is, if we simply say, the machine can do this, and never ask the question, should we have the machines do this, then I think we're going to make terrible choices. And sometimes we make those choices without recognizing that we're really making choices. And so an important part of the work I'm trying to do in writing about computer ethics is making the choices obvious. You remember, you were at the talk, right? You remember the example I gave is when you go to a grocery store and you want to check out, often you have a choice between using a human clerk and using a machine. And I think I want humans to have those jobs, so I use the human. That's a choice. But some people don't realize that they have a choice to make there or that their choice matters. Now, if the store only has robot checkouts, you can then go to that store and use a robot checkout, but maybe you'll say, I'm not going to go to that store anymore. I'll go to a store where I can interact with somebody of my species. So I think the most important aspect in the coming years as we deal with artificial intelligence is to recognize that we are making choices, and perhaps we should be making different choices than the people advocating for the artificial intelligence are telling us we must. And we might say, well, maybe we don't have to.
You asked a question before. The opening question was, do you use AI in your everyday life and have you been affected? And it got me thinking, maybe I use AI, but I don't even know that I'm using AI. And this thing that you're saying that we should make a conscious decision, is that something that perhaps the older generations can think about, but the younger generations are oblivious to?
Well, that could be. And if that's true, and I suspect that you're right, then we need to educate younger people to make choices. I know that in my country, America, technology is embraced easily and not very critically. I think in, for example, the European Union, they have been a little more diligent about thinking about what they're doing. So, for example, talking about artificial intelligence makes decisions about us. So your credit rating, for example, is done artificially. Human judgment is no longer used to decide whether or not you should get a loan. Well, in Europe, if you're denied a loan using some of this software, that software has to be written in such a way that it can explain why you were denied the loan. But in the United States, that isn't the case. And so that's one example of where if artificial intelligence is going to change our lives, we should be made aware of that. And if our lives are changed in a way that we don't like, we should demand that it be explained to us. And explainability, it turns out, is now, because of some of the pressures from governments and people and consumers, the idea of making artificial intelligence that can explain its decisions is its own subfield now, and I think that's a very positive development. But the fact that many of the AI decision-making programs can't tell us why is a danger. Am I answering your question?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Is that something that national governments should decide globally and not each national government by itself?
The philosopher in me says yes. The practical politician says, we can't, internationally, we aren't real good at cooperation. When a large political body like the European Union makes rules, sometimes that affects other countries' rules because the European Union says you can't do business with us in this area or in that area unless you go along with these regulations. So in that sense, sometimes there are leaders and followers. Certainly the first step is to have the nation where you are make the right decisions, and then we work out through treaties and commerce regulations how we get together. But I think any incremental progress we can make in trying to ensure that safety, reliability, privacy, these are all things that we value and we don't want artificial intelligence interfering with.
Thank you. These are ethical questions that have to do with AI itself. What about ethical questions about access to AI?
Oh, yeah.
Should AI be a public good, and is that a luxury that only perhaps developed countries can afford?
It should be, and in fact, some of the artificial intelligence projects that have fueled the latest boom in AI started out as open source for everyone. In fact, the ChatGPT people the name of the company is OpenAI, but as soon as it became very popular, OpenAI started charging you for using their latest. Well, there's a huge motivation for making money in these things as they become more and more important, more and more popular. But I'm with you. I think we should think carefully about how we might make these kinds of tools available not only to everyone in a developed country, but also, as you say, in countries that aren't as developed. The digital divide has been with us for a very long time. And one of the current difficulties with some of these generative AI that we talked about, like ChatGPT, is they require huge investments before they ever work. And then they work spectacularly. Well, not everybody can make those huge investments, but governments could. And so if those tools were made available more broadly, then more people could use them. And if we make sure that there are beneficial uses of AI, they would be more available. Now, this has happened. So, for example, if you want a word processor, people say, well, you do Microsoft Word. Well, you don't have to. There's an open office, and it's available to everyone on lots of different platforms. But people either don't know it, or they don't want to use it, or they work at a place that requires them to use the commercial product. I'm a little bit disappointed that the open source resources that are available to us aren't being used as much as I hope they would. But if we could follow that model in some of these AI tools, then the benefits could be more broadly shared.
So do you think we are in a boom of AI, or is that going to continue then into the future?
I'm not a real good soothsayer. We are clearly in a boom. You remember that exponential graph showing, and I showed it in scholarly work, but it's also true. Somebody did research. In fact, I had too long a talk and I had to remove the slide, but somebody did an analysis where they said, how often did companies in the Fortune 500 companies, when they're talking to their investors every quarter, how often did they mention AI? Same kind of slope, this huge exponential increase. So it's happening a lot. What I don't think the public or companies can maintain that much hype for that long. So it'll that interest will come down. But I think that the tools that are now being produced really are qualitatively better than what we had before, and they are already moving into the marketplace. Again, we don't know exactly how much, but I think quite a bit. So I don't think it's going to be a boom and then a bust. I think it's going to be a boom and then a leveling off, but that the new level is going to include quite a bit of participation of AI in our everyday lives.
Thank you very much. Thank you,
Thank you.
Professor.